Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? I think there's something wrong with my AirPods. I've had these since forever. And I think that something is happening. I think something's happening. They cost so much now. I don't want to have to replace them. But I might have to replace them. How are you doing? How's everyone doing today? Hi, Miss Shea, Florida. Good morning, Auntie and the Mystical Misfits. Good health to all. Oh, this is dirty. Good health to all. And have a terrific Tuesday. Thank you. Hi, Magic Mermaid. Good health. Morning, sunshine. Good morning. Good morning, Ayana. Let me just take care of my breast here for a minute. I'm sweating today. I don't care. I'm at the age where we just don't care anymore. I never thought I would get there. Never. I never thought I would get to a place where I don't give a fuck. But it's worse for me because at least my parents did it. And it was just their children around. Like, I talk to the public and I just don't give a fuck. So if I need to wipe the sweat from under my boobs, I will do it. Whatever. That's cute, Magic Mermaid. Good morning, TLT. And hello. And happy Mystical Misfits to everyone. Oh, by the way, from now on, the Mystical Misfit show will have one of these two symbols. It will either have this one or this one. All right? From now on, when you see it on YouTube, it will either have this one, which I love, or this one, which I also love. I can't choose. And remember, these were created by Sylvester of Cynthia Anna James. So from now on YouTube, this is what the morning show, what do you call it? What it's a template? Not a template, a dot. I forget what it's called. Who cares? That's what it's going to show from now on. Instead of my face in some awkward stance. You know, I always got my faces like, I was like, this shit has to stop. I've got to be more professional. What is wrong with me? All right. Good health, everyone, and good morning, Tracy. I love the red. I love that red heart over the other red heart. So thank you. Infinite Mr. I started detox today, 22, 11, 22. Good for you. What great numbers. 11, 22, 22. So are you in London, Infinite Mystical? Are you in London? Alrighty now. We are going to have a guest this morning. We are going to have a guest. She's a scientist. She's one of my favorite scientists in the world. She's my only scientist that I know. But she's going to come on board to talk about how do we stay safe during the COVID for Thanksgiving. We got RSV, we got COVID, we got the flu, right? So she's going to talk about what can we do when we go around family, especially them babies, those germy babies. My God, people, we can never do anything about those babies. Oh, I got to bring this to my doctor's office tomorrow. They do free refills. So, her name is Netia McCray. And she just had a stint on Dateline about the long haul COVID that she has and what it feels like to her and what's going on with others that have it. And she showcased and highlighted it on a segment on Dateline. I think it was Dateline, yes. Bring that positive portal energy. Yes, that is a beautiful number today. So 11:22, and then 11:22 a.m. or p.m. It's your rainbow number. So try to look for 11:22 today on 11:22. Same thing for tomorrow, the next day, the next day, the next day, up until 11:31. I guess. Could we do that with all the numbers though, now that I'm thinking about it? 901, 801, 11:30. No, we can't do it with all dates and birth dates. Okay. And times. Can we? No. Okay. Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason for it, to be honest with you. I used to think it was evil myself. But then I discovered that sometimes people want to come to work just to tell people that they're sick, right? Especially if they're lonely, right? I'm sick. I'm so sick. I was in the bank the other day, and the flu is bad out here, right? So I'm wearing my mask because people are getting the flu. The reason why they're getting the flu is because nobody wears their mask, right? And so I'm in the bank the other day, but I always wear my mask. And the woman was here and I was here. She was dealing with her teller. I was dealing with my teller. I don't know what happened, but my teller went to say something to her and she moved closer to me and then was like, I got the flu. And I was like, go. I was like, oh my God, what is wrong with people? Okay, so you got the flu. Okay. Just infect everybody. You got the flu. Your hands have to be germy, right? So you're passing money to the teller who's now going to take on the germy COVID money. And then she's going to rub her eyes later. I was so upset. But then immediately I just prayed. And I was like, God, please do not let me catch her flu. But I was wearing a mask, right? But I mean, this is how it spreads. And she came, I get the flu. And then the idiot teller was like, man, I almost had the flu 2 weeks. I'm like, stop it. Everybody, you go home. I didn't say that to her, but I was like, get away. Move back. I'm telling you, stop it, go home. It's ridiculous. I think it's that part of people that don't understand that it's their job to care about other people, which is why we have the Colorado shooting, which is why Shanquella died, right? It starts with the flu, with an inconsiderate woman with the flu. It gets bigger. It magnifies, right? Because it's such a level of inconsiderate people out there. So let's demagnify it. And let's bring on someone that can tell us how to stay safe around family during the holidays. Dun, 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 dun. I'm not talking about the arguments you all are going to have. That's not what I'm talking about. Oh my goodness.
Hi. Long time no see.
Well, that's not true. You and I will talk text intermittently, and I just saw you on Dateline.
Oh, Lord. Well, I like to say when you're put on earth and you're given a little bit more time, try to help other people with the time you have. So,
wait, hold on, Nisha. Didn't we just talk about that? And I just said I'm going to bring somebody on to help you survive the holidays. Now, last year, Netia, last year, everybody needed to see grandma, first of all. Most people don't even like their families, but everybody got to get home to see grandma, right?
Yes.
Then they get there, and America didn't announce that there was this weird strain going around. They did not tell anyone prior to. Then they kind of slipped it in there. Like, oh, there might be an awkward strain. They're doing it again this year. They're like, oh, there's this new strain. And then the news article disappears. You're like, where? I'm looking at it. Where? I saw it. I know I saw it. The article disappears, right?
Yes.
Everybody has a good time. They traveled by car 100 miles. They traveled by plane, but they got to grandma's house, right? They kick it with the breathing on each other. Don't even talk about the germy kids that run around carrying the parents' germs, right?
Yeah.
Now it's 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, and what do we get? Omicron.
Yes.
That has not gone away.
Well, we'll talk about it.
Oh, we'll talk about it. Okay.
Yes, we'll talk about it. So for this part, I'm gonna take my glasses off.
You
look humble
adorable.
Myself.
I love your headdress, and I'm pissed because it's giving me goddess energy.
I have to come on the Mystical Misfits. I had to come correct. I understood the dress code. My bad.
Crack me up.
I'm just saying.
You did good.
So we'll talk about last year around Thanksgiving time. If you were a parent and you had a child in school, if you were a healthcare worker, or if you were somebody who was dealing with those who are chronically ill or immunocompromised or disabled, you noticed something was going around, but you couldn't pinpoint if it was the tail end of the previous COVID surge or if it was a new variant.
Right.
Then we found out, like, boom, 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 boom. Right after Thanksgiving, it was all over CNBC. I remembered I was in Washington, D.C., and I woke up and I was watching CNBC, and the CEO of Moderna was like, Omicron scares me because I'm not sure our vaccines can protect you from Omicron because of how many mutations are on this. And I was like, Moderna CEO saying this? And it was like, oh, he's trying to get more money. I'm like, see, the Moderna CEO is a different cat. He's one of those people that he's a scientist at heart. And if he's scared about something, he's going to say it, even though you could see his stock price falling as he was talking. And he didn't care about the stock price falling as a CEO. That's what made me go, Omicron is a new chapter in this pandemic. And we found out December of 2021 into spring of this year that he was correct. It was a different beast. And so I know this is your platform, but I'm going to do my own predicted it and state, just going to say, I'm going to go back to our first conversation in summer of 2020, where I just found out after my COVID infection that I had long-term complications from COVID. And I said, the way this is attacking my body, it feels like it's trying to mutate and figure out the best way to spread, because it keeps trying to poke around to find where in my body is the weakest. And that's where it's trying to run and hide and attack. What we now know is that's exactly what coronavirus or COVID-19 does. It finds out the best way to spread itself. And it's done such a good job the past 2.5, almost 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
that over 95% of Americans have had at least one COVID-19 infection.
Yeah.
If we look back to last holiday season, it was less than 60% of Americans had a COVID infection. And those were primarily school students who got a COVID infection. Now, 95% of the country has had at least one, if not two, COVID infections.
Right. If not three. I know people that's had it 3 times.
Exactly. If you had talked to me in December of last year, I was still an anomaly, having had one COVID infection. Now, a lot of my work colleagues and partners have had 3+ infections because they got Omicron in the winter of this year. They got an Omicron variant this summer. Then they got an Omicron subvariant this fall with back to school. So I'm going to give you guys the layout of the landscape, if you don't mind, Tracey, of what it looks like this holiday season. So if you're a parent, if you work in a shared office space, or you're around people, you have noticed that since September, there was a little bit of COVID to go around in the summer, but that was because kids were getting out of school, people were traveling and going on vacation. The fall, there seemed to be almost like this chaotic threefer, or like the 3 horsemen of the apocalypse was running through schools and workplaces. First it was COVID, then it was RSV, then it was the flu, then it was strep. Like no one could figure out what were all these ailments that were taking down kids who were relatively healthy. For the first time in my life, I was telling my mother.
These kids were healthy.
They were. I'm going to get into that. They were healthy.
Yeah.
They were.
They were.
I even had adults who are out with RSV for a month. RSV in adults is unheard of. And we have been told for a long time, like, oh, this is because we wore masks for 2 years and we have this thing called immunity debt. And our immunity debt is because we didn't expose ourselves to common everyday viruses. And when we decided to go mask off starting May of 2022, all of a sudden, our immune system is weakened because we didn't have regular exposure to viruses. I'm going to give you your first hint that's going to help you this holiday season. Your immune system is not like a muscle. Immunity debt is a term that was created last year in 2021 in order to explain why relatively healthy people all of a sudden were coming down with severe illness after regular colds and flus and RSV. It did not exist before 2021. It is a hypothesis as to why we are all of a sudden getting sicker and not bouncing back from regular ailments. To put this in perspective, immunity debt is being used to explain why there's 6-month-olds in the hospitals right now in all major metropolitan areas and why pediatric hospitals are at capacity. Well, if you were 6 months old, how do you have immunity debt?
I was going to say that because we actually don't put masks on babies less than 2.
Yes.
So how do they create immunity debt? So this hypothesis is like you spend so much money trying to trick the people instead of just being honest. Now, before you go on, because I'm riveted, is RSV, you don't have to answer this because I know this is not your expertise.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll put a disclaimer out there, right? But I did hear that it is a variant of COVID.
So RSV is part of a similar virus family. So it's basically like a cousin, if that's a good explanation, to coronavirus. So I would say an immediate family member to COVID-19 is SARS. So if you remember back to 2003, the SARS outbreak that occurred in China in 2003, that's a sister to the present day coronavirus, because the actual name for coronavirus is SARS-CoV-2. The name for SARS in 2003 is SARS-CoV-1. Just for context, RSV, the typical seasonal flu, those are like second cousins and third cousins to coronavirus. So they're all part of like that really mucked up family strand that you don't want to mess with. And sometimes it could be in some bats, it could be in some guinea pigs, it could be in some like, what was the furry animals they got rid of in Sweden? The ferals or whatever the little squirry things they used to make coats with. Like you usually find them in mammals or exotic mammals when it comes to the human population. So they're related, but it's kind of like you only see them during the family reunion. You're not visiting them during the holidays. So not that related.
But here's the thing. Funny you should talk about some of them, this virus being in animals. Years ago, and I might be talking about, because we're talking about the age that I am right now.
Mm-hmm.
So might be 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be said that what animals get cannot get into humans.
Yes, zoonotic diseases or diseases that are present in animals were not considered to transfer from animals to humans. We have since debunked that.
Exactly. Now, when I was in my 20s, I was working in a hospital, and I made the mistake of saying something got transposed from the animal to human, and I believe it might have been in my own house. I feel like either I caught a cold and then my cat caught a cold, and I'm telling you, this nurse screamed at me at my lack of intelligence, and I was like,
yeah,
no, it really did happen. I was like, you know what? I'm not a nurse. Maybe I just need to shut up. But I just wanted to tell that nurse I was right.
Well, we'll expand
It just
upon
wasn't
that point.
discovered yet.
Right. So one of the big things during the pandemic, you may have remembered during the early stages in spring 2020, zoos were constantly doing COVID tests on their tigers and cats, etc.
And that was COVID.
Yes, because one of the big things is cats are highly susceptible to human viruses. So we're the main vector to spreading diseases to cats. So almost all of the cat deaths to COVID-19 in 2020 to 2021 were from human caregivers or zookeepers. So
I was right.
Yep. So don't just pretend that you can isolate with your dog when you're sick. Unfortunately, depending on the mutation of the virus, some coronaviruses are known to spread into dogs. This is still being studied, so we go, it's still a hypothesis, but there's no other way to explain the transmission. If we go back to spring 2020, it's like cruise ships. The reason why we know so much about coronavirus is because cruise ships are the perfect laboratory vessels, right? There's no outside interference. You can monitor people's movements. You know their schedules pretty much. Yes. And that's how we found out it was airborne.
Where they are. They know exactly who you've come in contact with.
They know the airflow.
The cruise ships have turned into a big study group.
Yes. It was one of the first things that convinced me that this particular coronavirus and all of its sub-lineages or variants were highly airborne. Because the only way to explain how you have recently, we had the cruise ship that docked in Australia that had over 800 people with positive COVID cases, because we had a proactive captain who said, there's too many people in the sick bay. Let's test everyone on the ship and see what's going on. And that's how they found the over 800 people with the positive COVID cases last week.
800 because the captain was like, test everyone?
Because the captain was like, this isn't making sense. This is where you put your common sense cap on and go, there's a lot of people in the sick bay.
Oh my God.
And that's why
this ship, I didn't understand how we got there.
Yes, that's how they found out they had so many people testing positive. And these type of cruises that you have in Australia in the Pacific Ocean are not like your 3-5 day cruises we have on the Atlantic side. These are 10, 14, 21 day cruises. So if you're having an outbreak, you have to nip it in the bud, because it's not like your passengers are going to be flying all over the world and it's going to take you days to find out what happened. You're stuck with them for another week or two, which is why the captain was like, hey, before we continue, we need to find out where we are, because we don't want to have 100% transmission. And now Australia and all Pacific cruises have reinstated masks, vaccine mandates, as well as COVID testing. That has all happened in the past week. And what usually happens in the Pacific is already here, and we're only 2 to 4 weeks behind typically. So thanks to that captain, due to unlike last year, we're not having as much COVID testing. We don't know what variants are out there. We don't know what variant is dominant. People like him utilizing their power in order to figure out what is the landscape has allowed for us to know if they're hitting that level of infection that quickly, that's going to hit us in 2 to 4 weeks, if not next week, because we don't have a proper timeline.
So now Thanksgiving.
this Thanksgiving. So we have three bad boys out there. We have COVID, but we don't know what type of COVID due to the lack of free testing or widely available testing versus last year. We have the flu and we have RSV. We also have a healthcare crisis. So last year, our hospital system was strained. This year, we're at 100% capacity in most children's hospitals, and most regular hospitals are beyond capacity. So if something were to happen, we're in trouble. And then last but not least, the fifth horse we have this holiday season is that our immune systems aren't what they were last year. If you've had 1, 2, or 3 infections, you're not building up your immunity debt. You have a weakened immune system. That's what you have. That's why your kid all of a sudden has to stay home for school for 3 days because they have a cold. This is why your kids are taking 3, 4 weeks to recover from RSV. When you know most kids who are over the age of 2, RSV is like a day or 2 thing for them. RSV is mostly a threat to immunocompromised toddlers or newborns. Now you have people laid out for weeks or months because of the cold, flu, and RSV. So our immune systems are not where they are. So whatever you were able to do last holiday season, you are probably not going to be able to get away with this holiday season, especially if you want your kids to go to school, or if you have to go to work, or you are taken care of or live with or want to maintain contact with someone who's immunocompromised. So all that doom and gloom aside, there are actual things that you can do this holiday season to protect yourself. The first thing.
I'm going to highlight you. Is that okay?
Oh, sure. That's fine.
Okay. Hold on.
I'm in educator mode, Nisha. So
go for it.
The first thing, thank you, Tracy. The first thing is rapid tests. I know, for those of us who know how these things work, it's not a pleasant experience. But the first line of protection you have is rapid tests for people either coming to your house or you going to someone's house. Unfortunately, due to the new variants we're still trying to monitor, rapid tests are about 40 to 60% accurate when it comes to testing or detecting if you have COVID. Now, there's a lot of misinformation that's out there, so I'm going to tell you what we know, what we kind of know, and what we don't know. When it comes to these rapid tests, what we're finding is people who only use the nose test. So if you've had to take a rapid test before, you've seen this little Q-tip thing, right? Mm-hmm. If you only do your nostrils, you have a higher chance of getting a false negative. What a false negative means is you think you're negative for COVID, but you're not. What we recommend people do this holiday season for people coming to your house or before you travel and you go to someone's house, not only do the nose, but do the cheeks and the top of your mouth. That increases the accuracy rate of your testing by 20, 30%. That gets you into the gold zone. Go ahead, Tracy.
Do we do it with the same Q-tip though? I'm confused.
You do. So this is how you do it. This is why I got my sample here.
Okay.
So you do your sides.
So go in your mouth first.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Once you do your cheeks, do the roof of your mouth.
Ah, interesting.
Then do your nostrils. No one wants snot in their mouth. Like, don't do that.
Right.
So do your cheeks first, then the roof of the mouth, then do the nose, 5 to 10 seconds, at least 3 rotations in each nostril. Then complete the test as directed. This gives you a higher accuracy rate than doing just the nostrils. The hypothesis right now is we can't figure out what variant is dominant, but what we can figure out is that if you only have the rapid tests, like you can't get your hands on a PCR because they're not as available or free anymore. Yeah. The closest way to get to that is doing the cheeks, the roof of your mouth, and your nostrils. Number 2 on the rapid test. A rapid test is good to test if someone is infectious. It will not tell you if you have COVID. So that's the one downside to it. So usually when it comes to Omicron subvariants, which some people may have noticed, unlike last year when you took a test, when it comes to an Omicron subvariant, you can be highly symptomatic 4 or 5 days before you test positive on a rapid test. And that's because you're building up the viral load that's necessary in order to show up positive on the rapid test.
Right.
Remember, the rapid test was designed for the original alpha strand or the first strand of COVID. It was not developed for Omicron. So it's kind of like It's a police officer looking for Megan Thee Stallion. And just like the Kardashians, Megan Thee Stallion got their BBL or their breast augmentations and stuff removed, and they're looking like Angelina Jolie now. It's going to take a minute for them to figure out who's this new coronavirus. So that's why you have to do the cheeks, the roof of your mouth, and your nostrils to increase your chance of catching even the slightest increase or bump in viral load to let you know if you're infectious. What rapid tests are also good for, if you unfortunately get COVID, is knowing when you're no longer infectious. If you have COVID, you've confirmed it, a rapid test is the best way to figure out if you are a danger to others. So make sure you stock up on these rapid tests. Now, I know what you're going to say. Oh my God, Miss Nisha, that's $25 and it's the holiday season. Do you think I'm made of money? No, I don't. Most public libraries.
They are $25?
They're $25 each, but hold on.
Oh my God.
But wait. If you live in any area with a public health department, which is almost every city in the United States, these are free at the health department. Don't be shamed, grab them. If you have insurance, you get 8 COVID tests, rapid tests here, free per month. If you got 5 family members, you know what you should do? Everybody line up, and what you do is go to your Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, wherever you have a pharmacy, and you request your 8 free rapid COVID tests. Do it ASAP because of the holiday season coming up. And they will give you 8 free COVID tests within 15 minutes. And keep those in your house for this season and throughout the next 30 to 60 days. It is your right until the end of the year.
Okay.
So now we got rapid tests out of the way. That's a great way to kind of filter out who came all this way and they should have taken a test and you need to lock your door from, and who you may not want to visit because you don't want to risk not having them for Christmas, right?
Right.
The second thing is your boosters. One of the great misconceptions I've had with my colleagues and students is that if they've had COVID in the last 4 to 6 months, they think they could just get their booster before the Thanksgiving holiday and they'll be fine.
Oh, no.
This was not very well communicated because a lot of people don't know they qualify for the bivariant booster 2 months or more after their last booster shot, regardless if you're immunocompromised or not. So every American qualifies for 4 COVID vaccines, and you can mix and match. So if you had a bad reaction, let's say to Moderna, you can try Pfizer, etc. A lot of folks are like, oh, okay, so before I go visit my grandma, I'm just going to get the bivariant booster that came out in September and I'm good to go because that's made for Omicron. Hold your horses. If you've had COVID in the last 4 to 6 months, you cannot get the bivariant booster because you supposedly have immunity to Omicron that is better than any vaccine can give you.
Got it.
Now, this is where you have to make your own personal health decision. If you went through Omicron and it wasn't a great experience, like you went through a previous COVID infection and you were asymptomatic, which means no symptoms, or you had very mild symptoms, but Omicron was the one that laid you out in bed for a week. If it's been at least a couple of months, make that health decision. Because at the end of the year, the government program sponsoring vaccines will end. And that means you will no longer be able to get the vaccine for free. Pfizer and Moderna have announced that the vaccine doses will be about $150 to $200 approximately starting in the new year. Because without
it's still under experimental. Are you kidding me?
Well, there you go. So if you're trying to get it financially and health-wise, this will be the time. And that's what I will say on that. So do not go and get a bivariant booster before you go on the holidays, either the Thanksgiving or Christmas, the week of. It takes 2 weeks at least for it to be effective. Yeah. And the bivariant booster is very effective at preventing hospitalization and death. That doesn't mean you're not going to catch COVID. And what that means is you still need to protect yourself from getting it in the first place. And that's where we get into the topic nobody wants to talk about this holiday season, but I got to.
Wait. I know what it is. Oh, see? My favorite topic. Yes. Mask. Wear a mask, people. Forget.
So another topic that I find people are very confused by is what type of mask are you supposed to be wearing? This is a topic that my mom will have my family members call me about because it's been very confusing, but I hopefully am going to break it down in 5 minutes that you can know what's the best mask for you.
You got more than 5 minutes, though.
Oh, well, thank you. But
Yes.
for the sake of everyone's attention span, I know I'm a nerd and this is my forte, but
you love this, right?
I'm like, I know this is my element, but I'm going to be respectful for everybody else. So everyone knows the fabric mask, right? When we started out this pandemic, everyone had their cutesy mask. It was bedazzled. They had it matching with their outfit. And everyone's like, I can be in a pandemic and look fashionable. That was the early days of the pandemic.
Okay.
Then we moved on to disposable. And everyone was like, this should be sufficient. I know my nurses and doctors wear this when they feel they're going to get liquid splattered on them if they're doing blood work or they're coming over with a cold and they don't want to like hurt people with compromised immune systems or the elderly or the disabled, right? So this became considered the high standard when it came to mask wearing in 2020. But baby, Delta came along and even this wasn't good enough.
Right.
And now we move into the KN95. So a KN95 or KN94s, the only difference between the two is where they're made. KF94s are made in Korea. KN95s are made in China. KN95s are notorious because they have almost like this vertical duck bill that goes in the front.
I love that. Yeah, the duck bill.
So the KN95 gives you superior protection in comparison to the disposable. Let me put it in some numbers so everyone can get. If you walk into a room and you're within 6 feet of someone with COVID with just a fabric mask on, it takes less than 2 minutes for you to get a sufficient exposure that you get COVID. 2 minutes. If you walk in with this disposable mask, it's 4 minutes. If you walk in with this KN95, it's 1 hour and 25 minutes.
Shit.
That's not enough for you because you're in a classroom or you're in a workplace and you need to be there for 8 hours. Then you can upgrade to an N95. An N95 is a respirator. Sorry, I'm talking too much. The N95 is a respirator that can be disposable. You can also find ones that are non-disposable if your money's tight and you don't want to keep spending $25, $50 every couple of months. They come in 2 major styles, but they're most notorious in terms of they go over your head versus your earlobes. So the KN95 or the KF94 goes across your ears, while KN95s go across your head as such. And usually have the 2 straps that go on top of your head, right? So you can either have a vertical duckbill, just like the KN94s or KN95s, or if you have a big head, because I try to be inclusive, there's also this style. So this is the sideways duckbill. And the straps are on the inside. Oop, wrong direction.
Yeah, I never knew what to do with that.
And the straps are inside and they're not elastic. It's almost like a soft felt material. So if you have a big head and you're concerned about having to wear it all day and not cut into you, you see how soft these are?
Got it.
So it's not elasticy. It still is stretchy, but it's not elastic. So it's not cutting into your head. And you have your duckbill like this. So if you have a big head, I recommend this sideways duckbill style. And if you have a small head, I recommend the vertical duckbill style. The problem we have when it comes to KN95s and KN94s, as well as N95s, is there's a lot of frauds or fake versions of these masks. Yes. And the reason is they typically go for more than $3 a mask. So that's quick money for people who are paranoid and panicky and not tied to medical supply companies. There's a great website. It's called Arm Trust. If you Google Arm Trust mask quality on Google, you can find every manufacturer of a KN95 or a KF94, as well as N95 mask in order to make sure the one that you're ordering off of Amazon or any other vendor like Walmart is a trusted source. My 2 favorite brands at the moment is ACI. So ACI is the one who does these surgical ones. 3M, the 3M Aura, comfortable, can fit small, large heads, even though it's kind of a pricier option in this arena. And then BYD. So the BYD one fits my small head and gives me a pretty tight fit to make sure there's no leaks, because I am immunocompromised and need to make sure that I'm protected. Now, if you're planning on traveling for Thanksgiving this week, you may not be able to do an Amazon order in time for you to go over to your family's house in order to be safe, right? There's a trick. Whether you're wearing a KN95 or KF94 or an N95 mask, if you find that when you breathe, you can feel the air coming up to your eyeballs, you don't have a good fit on your mask. And your mask is supposed to filter out the air and protect you from any of the pollutants or viruses or dust or what have you that's in the surrounding air. So if you feel air coming up to your eyes, you don't have a good fit on your mask. Think of any horror medical movie about viruses. You know that scientist is in trouble when he goes, and you can see the virus floating up to his eyeballs. Don't want that. Coronavirus can get into your eyeballs, your nostrils, and your mouth. So protect your neck and protect your face. What you can do if you're stressed for time and don't have these masks is double mask, whether it's a disposable, a KF94, KN95, or N95. So I have my disposable here. What I'm going to do is make sure it goes around the bridge of my mouth and do this here with my 2 fingers to make sure it's flushed up against my face. Now that I have that, I can put my fabric mask on top so I can still look cute, as well as it makes sure that my mask doesn't move and I have that air coming up.
Got it.
And that doubles the amount of time or protection, at least, that I have in whatever environment that I'm in. If you have breathing problems, try to find a lightweight mask to put on top your high quality mask. So for me, I'm a person who has to have oxygen on standby. So sometimes I can't wear 2 masks because it's too much oxygen or it's too hard for me to breathe. What I've noticed is if I put my disposable mask on the outside of my N95.
Got it.
So I can either do the fabric one or disposable. It's a lot easier for me to breathe, and make sure you do a pressure fit like this with your 2 fingers starting from your nose. It's a lot easier for me to breathe. You guys can still hear me talk, and Tracey knows this is an accomplishment given the way I was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
This is the best way if you're having breathing issues, is to put the disposable on the outside. Not only does it extend the life of your N95 or KN95s, but also gives you room to, as well as talk and project. This is how I wear my mask when I'm teaching my students, and I haven't had a COVID infection despite teaching this fall. Not only not a COVID, but RSV, flu, nothing. And if anybody was going to go down, to quote one of my students, it would be Miss Nisha. She says with love.
Because you've been around your students, right?
Yes, because I've been teaching this semester.
Students, right? They're teenagers, right?
Yeah, they're teenagers. And thankfully, one of my students has now realized she has long COVID, which means she just never recovered from COVID after talking with me. And a couple other students are realizing their family members and loved ones have it. And that's why home has been a lot more stressful, because they're taking care of family members who can't work or who are now disabled or who are now just not their regular selves. And I would say here, like, even though it's uncomfortable, we want to get back to the normal times, realize that vaccines do not protect you from long-term complications from COVID. 1 in 5 American adults after an Omicron infection suffers from long-term health complications, including kidney disease, diabetes, neurological issues, including seizures and early onset memory loss, like Alzheimer's and dementia, as well as spinal issues, mild to moderate arthritis, and heart attacks, strokes, and aneurysms. If you noticed, there's been a lot of people all of a sudden who've passed suddenly, have had aneurysm, heart attacks or strokes, kidney disease, diabetes diagnoses.
We've noticed.
With the 1 in 5. COVID vaccination does not give you permission to not wear a mask. It is only to protect you from serious ailment, including hospitalization and death. And that's only if you're healthy. A mask is the best way for you to protect yourself from being that 1 in 5. Outside of masks, Another thing I highly recommend, especially if a lot of people are congregating in one area, is air purifiers. I know they're the scary box, but I like to think of humidifiers, right? They're the humidifiers, scary cousin, just because we're in a pandemic, but actually they should be considered a best friend in your household. So a lot of people shy away from air purifiers because, just like humidifiers, they're afraid of the cost. Nobody wants to spend more money on another electronic device in their house. But if you ask anybody with asthma or with breathing difficulties, an air purifier is your best friend. Because not only do you not want to breathe in COVID particles from your children or from your guests, you also don't want to breathe in dust, allergens, as well as smoke and other odors. So an air purifier is great to make your house smell great, as well as make sure that you don't have that one uncle going all the
Oh
dang
my God.
time because what you
kill
have
me.
in your house.
That would kill me. No, that would kill me.
So what I recommend to people is to do the 2 strategy, and that's have an air purifier for the space you're going to occupy, or people may be prompted to sit maskless. If you have some family members who are just really about going back to normal, not wearing a mask or not taking COVID mitigations or protocols, or don't know they may potentially be sick, have an air purifier for the space where you're congregating in. And the second one, which you won't hear pretty much being spread around, but actually does help, is a humidifier as well. Coronavirus particles or COVID-19 particles latch on to anything. So one of the things that we've discovered in the past 2 years was there was this great mystery of how people were getting COVID outside. Is the risk of COVID outside the same as inside? No, it's significantly less. But people were confused. How are people getting COVID at the park? Like, is it that contagious that you, and the wind just infects the whole field? Well,
Yeah.
what we've now found out is that in urban areas with heavy pollution, coronavirus binds to the actual pollution particles in the air.
Oh my God.
So that could be smoke, that could be smog, it could be any of those things it binds to.
Wait a second. That's why all those people standing in line to get tested at City MD in New York City all got infected. They not necessarily were infected with COVID, but standing in line to get the test, they were kind of like jam-packed. It wasn't really 6 feet apart.
Yes.
And then New York City had an uptick of, oh my God.
We now know it binds to pollution particles, etc. And that makes not only an air purifier important, but a humidifier important, because a humidifier increases the moisture content in the air and doesn't allow coronavirus particles to float as freely as they would in dry air. So having a humidifier running allows for the COVID particles to bind to the water molecules that are being put out by the humidifier and drops them to the ground. So that decreases the chance of people breathing in those coronavirus particles because they're almost being pulled down by the water particles. So an air purifier and a humidifier, having that duo is what's going to be extremely helpful if you have a lot of people in a space. The last hint depends on your geographical area and your ability to do this, is cracking a window. Surveys have shown that if you are in an Uber and you crack the window even a quarter of an inch, you decrease the amount of CO2, which is how we measure how much air is being exhaled and held in a space, drops almost 70+% from you just cracking a window a little bit.
Yes.
Now it's winter. You see me with my sweater. I'm in Boston. I get it. It's cold. I don't want to lose the heat that I paid so much for. But I also know I've paid over 6 figures to get to where I'm at post-COVID from spring 2020.
Right.
So I go,
I can crack a window.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
hold on a second, Nisha. You know, when I was in California and driving Ubers a lot before, once I lost the use of my car.
Yeah.
I did recognize that I'd rather sit in a, because, you know, California we do have chilly days. But it didn't matter if it was chilly. Because I used to tell my drivers, because they would put the air conditioner on, right? And I'm like, no. So I would get in the car and I'd be like, can you please allow me to, because, you know, they're very, I don't know if you know about Uber drivers. They can be nasty.
Oh, really?
Oh, they really, when you take it all the time, you see the ugly people out there.
Yeah.
And so I would say, can I put my back window down. And they would say, I have the air conditioner on. And I go, I know. I get it.
And I think that's where
air conditioner meant whatever's circulating from him was going to circulate in that car.
Mm-hmm.
So turn your air conditioner off. Let me roll down the window. You roll down your window, and we'll get that cross. But now COVID might miss both of us. Oh my God. I'm telling you, I did things by accident. By accident.
But that's discovery. Things happen by accident. Think penicillin by accident.
Thank you. I get it. Mm-hmm.
And so I would say this here. A lot of things we've discovered works well and doesn't work well by accident. And this humidifier thing, it makes sense. It was one of the things I discovered by accident, and I realized other people were discovering by accident. And when I dove into it, I find there was actually scientific papers verifying this. And so now, for example, if we have a member of our household quarantining, the only shared space would be the bathroom, for example, right? I'll run the shower for a good 3 to 4 minutes just to get the humidity up in that shared space. So if there are any particles in that space, and then have the air purifier in there to all those heavy particles that are now bounded to water molecules. So, and crack a window are the 3 things you can do in terms of spaces. And then I wrote down, depending on your location, nobody wants to hear this, but we've seen on Pinterest and Instagram and YouTube, like the family tables and bouquets that are outside. If you have the space and the weather's nice, consider this. Even maybe consider renting some outdoor space heaters that you can utilize in order to do outdoor dining as much as possible. Now, I know that's not accessible to most people, but I like to throw that out there that if you got a bunch of land and a little bit of disposable income, if you want to see Granny for Christmas, just throw some money that way. Make it a cute moment. Get a decorator. Get some cute little table settings. Like, that's another idea if you feel the risk is too high in an indoor setting. And I guess last but not least, what happens after the holidays? All the work that you did in preparation of going into the holiday season, you also are going to need post-holidays. So depending on how well your COVID mitigations worked, there is always a chance and a risk that you still get exposed and you still get infected, right? I like to tell people I go about with the Swiss cheese model. Not one of these things is going to be enough, right? You need to have multiple layers of Swiss cheese because there's always going to be holes in a mask policy and a rapid test policy and a purifier policy and an outdoor policy. But if you have enough pieces of Swiss cheese in between, trying to go through all those pieces of Swiss cheese gets really hard. It goes from going through one piece of Swiss cheese, 30%, through going through, like I think the Resident Evil scene where my poor brother was trying to escape the lasers. You want coronavirus to work a little bit.
Right.
So the more of these things you're able to adopt, the lower your risk of catching. But if you do catch it, one of the things I'll ask you to make sure your house is prepared for, Pedialyte.
Oh my God. Pedialyte's my best friend right now, but go ahead.
Oh, no worries. People
for different reasons. Oh, by the way, you can make your own electrolyte.
There you go.
I just want to let people know, because Pedialyte has become really, really expensive, that I need my electrolytes keep depleting because I sweat so much, right? But I didn't know, ignorance, that the more I sweat, the more I was depleting myself of my electrolytes. I was becoming weaker and weaker. I didn't know I could die for lack of electrolytes.
Yep.
So please explain, because people don't understand that's the COVID issue. Your electrolytes being compromised. Oh my God. This
was one of the lessons. Like, I knew about Pedialyte when you've had the Pepto-Bismol song, for instance. Oh, sorry. Any of those issues, Pedialyte comes in handy.
Yes.
if you know the song, you know the song.
Yes. And you know you should take Pedialyte after it.
Right. Because you knew you depleted yourself of the resources. And if you're a kid of the 90s, you know the Oregon Trail. you didn't want to end up like those people in the video game. So you would have Pedialyte. And as children, it's so easy for children to become dehydrated. Pedialyte was something you kept on hand in order to boost up their hydration level and their electrolytes, right? Mm-hmm. So as an adult, I realized that, not because I went on all day drinking binges, because that's what I recently found out people use Pedialyte for as well, the morning after, not just those, but also realizing when I felt run down teaching or traveling, I'll do a quick swig of Pedialyte because I realized that was my electrolytes were getting kind of low. Or when I would go through my menstrual cycle, I would realize that a swig of Pedialyte would be the difference between being in bed for 6 hours versus I'm still in pain, but I can at least sit up and do some work. So I always kept Pedialyte on deck. After my COVID infection of spring of 2020, I didn't realize that what COVID did to my body is it basically destroyed my ability to create energy. One of the things that helps me maintain my energy levels now is taking daily swigs of Pedialyte to keep my electrolytes up. Most Americans at this point have some form or variation of a weakened immune system. So think of yourself back to the days when you just finished one of the various ailments in the Pepto-Bismol song. You need your swig of Pedialyte. And if you're dealing with ailments, it's going to help you not sweat to death all those electrolytes or have your immune system crash, because it needs those electrolytes to keep you up and running. So always make sure you have on deck a bottle per family member at least before you go anywhere, before the holiday season, just in case.
Bring it in a suitcase, put it in your trunk, but have Pedialyte,
as well as have it at your house. One of the things I've noticed since back to school of this season, we have supply chain issues and everything else. If you've been in a pharmacy in the past 2 months, you've noticed how the cough drops are gone, the cold medicine is gone, Kleenex is gone. If you have time, go ahead, Tracy.
No, Kleenex,
no.
You gotta buy Kleenex in August. I already know this.
Yes.
Right. But once school starts, oh my God.
I would say here, yes, typically you have to buy it in August, but even I have never seen cough medicine, cough drops be sold out or the shelf empty for 6+ weeks. And that's a huge indicator to me. Either there's a supply chain issue or a lot of kids are sick or a lot of families are sick. Mm-hmm. And from firsthand experience with my own students, my students have been sick continuously for the past 6 to 8 weeks, to the point that they're now trying to use the last bit of the cough syrup bottle, shake it with a little bit of water and hitting that before they go to school. And I'm like, okay, we're down bad. That's the situation before Thanksgiving of this season. In New England, I know in particular, that means Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, the really cold states in the United States at this moment. Well, I guess if you're in the Midwest, you may want to contest that. Not here to fight. We know after Thanksgiving every year for the past 40 years is when most kids get sick. That's going to be especially true after this holiday season. What's making it worse is we're already dealing with pediatric hospitals at 100% capacity, which means in terms of medical care, we're right back to where we are spring 2020, if not worse. So if you are depending on an urgent care clinic or a pediatrician or a primary care doctor or a hospital to take care of you if you do get sick, do not cash in that bet. Make sure you have things at home in order to monitor your symptoms and allow for someone to care for you. That means making sure your home is prepared, that if you do go to a gathering and you do get sick, whether it's at the gathering, traveling to or from, or even if you did everything right and you still didn't get this, coming back to the workplace or to schools or public transportation or public areas where everyone else probably didn't take the same mitigations as you is going to be a huge risk. You may not want to hear it. You need to make sure you're prepared at home as well. If you haven't in the past 2.5 years gotten one, get an oximeter. That's the little finger clip thing that measures your blood oxygen levels. Yes. Make sure you monitor that the week after and weeks following. Make sure you have your rapid tests, because you need to know if you are the first one to be infectious and need to isolate from your family if necessary. Make sure you have your mask. When you come back to the school, workplace, etc., even your kids should be wearing masks, because everybody else, you don't know what they're doing in their home.
Right.
But you may not want to bring it to your home.
Right.
So the next 4 to 6 weeks, whether you get it or not, all of these things you need to be prepared with and continue these behaviors until the new year. Does that suck? Immensely, especially as we're going into almost 3 years of this. But I want you to make that personal decision. Would you rather be able to spend that time with family? It just doesn't look the way you want it to look. Or do you want it to have that moment where it looks amazing and be dealing with grief and strife and stress, especially during the holiday season where everyone is living paycheck to paycheck in this country because you wanted that moment? And so that's how I'm going to end it. Make sure you take your precautions, follow any of the advice, as well as after the holidays, it's going to be a high period of infection. It could be COVID, RSV, flu, what have you. But all of these things I've just recommended to you will protect you or help decrease your risk from that. If you have anything you need to have done by the end of the year, get her done. Because I have a funny feeling, based on conversations I've had in the medical space and the educational space, we're going to have more staff shortages and more issues getting the stuff that we need going into the new year. And that was my educational presentation.
Yes, thank you. Oh my God. I was riveted, first of all. But while you were talking, I was like your assistant, right? Yeah, I was like your assistant.
Oh.
I put up links for pulse oximeters. I put up links for humidifiers. I picked the cheapest one, and I also picked the one that could humidify that could look extensively pretty in your house, right? I don't like obnoxious humidifiers. Like, why? Right?
Yes.
Why do we need have a blue neon dome? Like, no, I'm not doing that. So I picked the one that aesthetically pleasing, but also it was cheap. It was about $37 on Amazon.
Yeah.
I put the air purifier up. I deal with a company called Vitality Medical.
Yes.
You do know that company?
Yes, I know this company, yes.
See? I'm so proud of myself. Hercules, I'm so proud of myself. You have no idea all the work I've done all by myself, talking to no one. And I'm like, this is it. This is it. This is it.
If it makes you feel better, one of the things that I'm highly critical about of the past 2.5 years is that everyone has had to step up their science, engineering, and research game in order to be able to protect themselves. I see you.
Girl, I did my job.
I see you.
Also, I also put up the rapid test. Now, these, of course, they charge, right?
Oh, but
if you could just repeat the advice about the health department, I would appreciate that one.
Yes. So these are 3 of the popular ones. You have FlowFlex. You have Binex Now. You also have QuickView. So depending on where you go and what they have available, you're going to get either one of these. There are a couple of other ones that are available depending on your geographical location, but those are the popular ones being distributed at this time. I will say if you do not have insurance, your health department, and if you live in the city of Washington, D.C., Boston, New York, and LA, you can also go to a public library in order to get your free rapid COVID tests, because that's part of their respective public health programs. Now, if you have insurance, due to the COVID-19 Emergency Act that was signed by the White House that ends at the end of the year.
Uh-oh. What happened to her? Oh, no. Why did she come out? I also wanted to show you guys something else, but now I realize it's broken. So you can also get this from Vitality Medical, but this one is broken. Okay, she's back. Hold on.
Sorry, the software crashed.
What happened?
I was speaking too much truth. Oh, no.
Talking too much truth. Exactly. Yep. Yep.
So if you have insurance, your insurance is obligated to cover 8 rapid COVID tests from local pharmacies across the country. So that's your CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, even like your Publix's or your grocery store pharmacies. What you need to do is you go up to the counter and you say, hey, I want my 8 free COVID tests. They'll ask for your information and they'll put it in as a prescription. I'm gonna block mine. As you can see here, they put it in as a prescription. You wait the 15 minutes, they pull whatever rapid COVID test they have on hand, and they hand you a bag with 8. If you have 5 family members, for example, you have 40 rapid COVID tests you can pick up every month. Pick up your November ones, and then next week, pick up your December ones. That's 80 rapid COVID tests. That's a lot of money when we're looking at $25 a pop. Get your free stuff. Protect yourself. So that's how I would approach with the actual rapid COVID tests. And don't forget, when you're taking them, don't just do the nostrils. We're dealing with different variants. Do the inner part of both cheeks and the roof of your mouth, then do your nostrils. That's going to give you a higher chance of having an actual negative or positive test that's correct versus a false negative. The worst thing you can get is a false negative and act like you have an actual negative and lead to some unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah. Okay. So I do want to add, let me take you out of the stream. Not out of the stream. So even prior to having any illness, you might want to build up your lung capacity. Thank you. And again, I've become my own scientist, but to be honest with you, people don't believe me, but I really talk to spirit. I really do. And they were like, get this. So again, it comes from Vitality Medical, and you build up your lungs, right?
And she's telling the truth. I'm 2.5 years into my COVID journey, and I have to do those exercises now in order to talk with you all, because you don't want to be like me doing this.
Right, which is a can of oxygen. That's what that is. Right.
This is the boost oxygen. Yes. If you already are suffering from post-COVID complications and you're afraid of traveling, this bad boy here. And I will say this, if you unfortunately have suffered from COVID recently, get that. That's going to help you immensely, because that's what they're going to tell you at the doctor's office, to be quite honest with you.
They'll give this to you in a hospital. The simplest of machines. So the objective is to get all 3 balls up in the air. You're having a bad lung capacity if you can just do 1. That's not good. 2 is okay, but it means that you have to keep practicing until you get all 3 up.
Yeah.
So this is a good idea. Again, by Vitality Medical, it costs like $5. But I have to tell you, if you get a whole case, right? The whole case might be $50, and you can have it for the whole family. Do not share this.
No. No.
You can wash it. It's not that big of a deal. You wash it, hang it to dry, but get everybody their own, and just keep it in the kids' bedroom. Give your husband, your wife, their own. But that is good, so that when you do get something, for the most part, everything attacks our lungs. Yeah. For the most part.
I will say, not only, what's a nice way to say this? I'm going to just tread the water here. Given 95% of Americans have suffered a COVID infection, most of the people listening understand that after a COVID infection, not only do your lungs seem to be suffering, but other organs are suffering. The reason the lungs are attacked so much first is because you have more blood vessels obtaining and releasing oxygen versus other parts of your body. We now know COVID-19 is a vascular disease. That's my other predicted it. I had to throw in there.
Yes.
And because it's a vascular disease, that is why it's not only
a respiratory disease.
No, it's vascular. The reason.
What does vascular mean?
That means your blood in your veins. So basically, it attacks your veins by collapsing your veins and making it difficult to exchange blood, which leads to blood clots, aka the strokes, heart attacks, and aneurysms.
That's why everyone is leaving this earth quickly, because it attacks the, gives them blood clots, gives them
So,
heart attacks. Oh my God.
so I will speak from personal experience. When we first talked in August of 2020,
Right.
I was suspicious I had a heart attack. Everyone was acting weird with me, but I was like, the way my heart was acting, the way the scans
Yeah.
were looking, and the way when you know you have blood clots, those areas feel warm. I never experienced, but my mother is a nurse and she was also a rehabilitation nurse.
Oh, I
So
didn't
a
know you
lot of stuff.
were a nurse. Oh wow.
Yeah. So that's the only reason I'm still here, thankfully. It's because my mother saw those warning signs. And even though it wasn't confirmed, we started treating me like I was a heart patient. That meant daily baby aspirin, using flaxseed in order to start rehabilitating my cardiovascular health in order to try to fight those blood clots. And that was a huge bump up because before I was on the baby aspirin, me getting on a plane was what we believe led to my heart attack shortly after. We believe it moved a blood clot in my body, and that's what led to my heart attack. What has given me more confidence and what has confirmed it is now we have studies proving that long COVID is a vascular disease. It causes microclots, which aren't readily picked up in blood tests, which look for D dimmers. If you know anything about heart attacks and strokes and aneurysms, you know D dimmer levels. When they're high, it means there's a lot of clot material in your blood, and that's going to lead to an increased risk of a heart attack, stroke, or aneurysm.
That's that test they give you when the initial test doesn't show that you've had a heart attack.
Exactly.
I know
that's
that.
the blood work
Yeah.
they request. So if you
Right.
don't show up on an EKG or a CT
Right.
scan, they
Right.
look for indications of blood clots via your D dimmer levels. One of the things that was a huge mystery early on when it came to the COVID pandemic is that people's D dimmer levels were low, which is why no one suspected, except patients, that it was a cardiovascular disease, because the only way it was showing up in the immediate term was in the lungs. But if we think of the lungs as exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide, that's all blood vessels. So if you have microclots, it's preventing you from taking oxygen in. And when you're not able to take oxygen in, that's what causes that glass shattering that we saw on CT scans of the lungs of COVID patients. That's why you're being put on a ventilator, because you can't get enough oxygen in your body. And if I go back to the first 6 months of my COVID infection, it felt like an elephant was on my chest, like I couldn't get enough oxygen.
Yeah, remember you said.
We now know it wasn't my lungs, it was my blood vessels couldn't get oxygen. Because later, I started having the microclots not just in my lungs affecting it and shutting down, but all over my body. And that's what led to my seizures. I now know I have mitochondrial seizure disorder. That means my body can't create energy via mitochondria because there's not enough oxygen flowing through my body to convert into energy. So if I am in a relapse or having a difficult day and I can't get enough oxygen, I start to have pretty severe seizures. Doctors initially thought my seizures were epileptic because that's the most popular form of seizures. What we're seeing with people post-COVID is mitochondria seizure disorders, which is you can't produce energy, so you're tired and fatigued all the time, but your body's in crisis mode. We're also seeing aneurysms, heart attacks, and strokes because of these microclots that are so tiny they can't be picked up by blood work. How we've discovered them, and even I myself found out that, like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, I do have these microclots. Anytime they would draw blood, they were like literally pulling the syringe out. And it was almost like they were trying to extract air out of my body. Like, that's how hard it was to draw blood.
Your blood?
It was because they were hitting a clot and it was sticking in the needle, and they had to fight the clot in order to get my blood drawn.
I cannot.
This is why most people post-COVID are like I'm having this brain inflammation. It's all these microclots causing various organs to be in survival mode. And like I mentioned on our previous conversation, it's like you have a round table and it's all the organs. And they're like, listen, I know y'all used to us having production at 100%. Production's at 40%. So lungs, you operate in that 60% capacity because we have to have you. But your brain, you think you're going to remember your child's birthday? It's not important right now. You think you're going to remember that important work assignment? It's not important right now. We're decreasing brain function down to 40% because we're working with less oxygen and we got to fight these blood clots. We also know these microclots are really sticky, which is what I discovered. Mine look like molasses under a microscope. Like it's just a long string. It almost looks like tissue. Like if you ever had a really bad menstrual cycle, it looks like the inner lining tissue, but it's an actual clot in your veins. These sticky clots aren't heavily responsive to typical anti-clotting medications you would give someone with high blood pressure or heart disease. And that's the new frontier in long COVID research. If you are finding yourself after a COVID infection, or if after this holiday season you do get one, I highly recommend starting a regimen. Talk to your medical professional first, of baby aspirin and flaxseed and CoQ10. Those things help your cardiovascular health and also help increase blood flow. But make sure you double check with a medical provider. Those are the things we recommend for people to decrease their risk of a stroke, heart attack, or an aneurysm post-COVID.
So you're saying, hold on.
It's cardiovascular. Do not focus solely on the lungs. Focus on keeping your heart and blood health.
Okay. First of all, I just want to add a YouTube channel that it's 45 seconds long, people, where you could make your own electrolytes. You do not have to. I live in the Caribbean, so electrolytes for me cost $8.99.
Oh no, yeah, yep. Make your own. Lick some salt and drink water behind it. Do what you got to do.
I make my own. I keep it in my refrigerator. I do drink it about 3 times a day. Because I do have low electrolytes. It's just hotter. I'm older. Yeah. I'm sweating more, right? Hold on. But you said aspirin. What else?
Aspirin, flax seeds, and CoQ10. Aspirin's probably the one you need to check with your medical professional first, just to make sure it doesn't. Yeah.
Because, yeah.
But check with. For all of them. But those are things that are highly recommended if you're at an increased risk for heart attack, stroke, or aneurysm, because it helps your blood vessels maintain their health and structural integrity.
Well, first of all, most people that have been dying unexpectedly at a really young age don't have this information that aspirin could save their lives. Let's just start there.
Yes. But the major concern, go ahead.
Oh yeah. However, I have to put, and I need to stress this, aspirin is a blood thinner.
There you go. Hence why I said, ask your medical professional. I had no underlying health conditions. That's how I was able to get on it. He may recommend something else.
Yeah, I did put it in the box. So they need to be clear about that, because if you're taking certain types of herb medicines, you might be thinning your blood anyway. And other medications might conflict with aspirin. So
there you go.
Please, aspirin is readily available over the counter, but please talk to your doctor. The problem, if you're taking aspirin on your own and something happens, aspirin is one of the first things they give you in a hospital. So if you're taking a blood thinner, which is what aspirin is, and then they add to it, it's a problem. So whenever a doctor says, what are you taking? Don't discount aspirin. Don't discount Tylenol. Don't discount ibuprofen. When you go to the ER, they need to know what over-the-counter and aspirin is a big deal.
Yes.
At the ER.
No, that's one of the things that everyone laughs at me when I go, no, I tell everybody dealing with me, I take my 2 baby aspirins a day. And they're like, oh, well, that's something over the counter. I go, you don't know how Tylenol, aspirin, et cetera, works with people. My recommendation is what I've seen as the most popular recommendations given by doctors for people post-COVID in order to minimize that increased risk. One of the things, unfortunately, we've noticed with Omicron is that in particular, people under the age of 65 have almost a 400% increased risk of an aneurysm, heart attack, or stroke within the first 90 days post-infection.
Yes.
but
Yes.
always check with the medical provider or professional in order to make sure that it doesn't interact or cause a negative consequence with whatever you're on or with your current health conditions. But
The
what I would say here
problem that
is,
we're having,
hmm?
the problem that we're having with young adults is that doctors don't have enough education, I'm sorry, on COVID
No?
to know that they should be instructing their 40-year-olds, their 35-year-olds, their 30-year-olds
Yeah.
on post-COVID symptoms.
I would say one of the silver linings, first, big shout out to my mom, because I wouldn't be able to see this silver lining if it wasn't for her medical care. Because I have a lot of family and colleagues who got sick when I got sick, and they're now in the nursing home or no longer with us. And these are people who had no underlying conditions. So I know how close I came to being one of those statistics. I will say this here. It's now getting around, not because doctors are keeping up with the latest medical research, but because if everyone around you is starting to get it, 1 in 5, every infection, if you're playing Russian roulette, most people don't play with 1 in 5 odds. They typically play with 1 in 7 odds. So 1 in 5 odds, eventually that bullet's going to hit someone you know. And what we're discovering is even the CDC has come out and acknowledged that 1 in 5 adults, and this was back in May of this year, 1 in 5 adults will develop a chronic health condition, a lifelong chronic health condition post-COVID, regardless if they're vaccinated or not.
Right.
That's the big asterisk.
Clear. Right. Regardless of whether or not they have been vaccinated, if you get COVID, there are some post-COVID symptoms that develop.
Yes. And one of those things.
Watch out for those symptoms. Be proactive in your health. Don't act like, oh, this is, because
old
one
age.
of the women that died, I can't remember her real name, but she was in the movie Julia. And she kept saying something's not right. I know it.
That was one of the more tragic Twitter So
thank you.
The writer of Julie and Julia, if you remember that really famous movie where Meryl Streep plays Julia Childs, the French chef who had the famous PBS show. The writer of that New York Times bestselling book and behind the movie, she recently passed of post-COVID complications, even though she had a very mild COVID infection. And she posted on Twitter a thread leading up to her death going, I just don't feel right. Like I can't remember things. I feel fatigued. And people on Twitter were reaching out to her, telling her, like, don't be scared, but you need to go to a medical doctor. You need to have a paper trail because you're developing long COVID. And long COVID sounds like, oh, you just were unlucky and you're just going to have decreased health the rest of your life. What a lot of people don't know, within the first 6 months, 40% of individuals with long COVID either suffer a life-altering health crisis, which is a heart attack that disables them, or a stroke or an aneurysm, or they pass. And long COVID is considered to be the constellation of 200 symptoms that can happen post-COVID-19. And that ties back into COVID as a vascular disease. So anything that needs blood can be affected by COVID infection. And this poor woman, I was reading her tweets when she passed because someone sent them to me.
Yeah.
And I had just wished her doctor knew what she was talking about. Because her doctor kept telling her, well, you're middle-aged. This happens. You forget things. I even had my neurologist tell me, oh, you can't do simple math anymore. Well, you're a type A personality. You're an engineer. You've never failed. So this is your first attempt or realization that you can fail at something in life. And I went, see, my pride is on a level 9. I get it. I'm a Taurus. You can laugh, Tracy. It's fine. I know I'm stubborn. I know I'm prideful.
You know how I feel about Taurus.
I know. However, I'm like, I went from
my dad was a Taurus. My dad was a Taurus. But you're one of the more amazing Tauruses that has begun. It's a long story with Uranus and Taurus and the need to open up and change and be more flexible. You have moved beyond the flexibility that's required. 1, for a Taurus, and 2, who survived to tell us about COVID here. You may have gotten long COVID, right?
Okay.
Very few people can come back from long COVID, but I know you're still in the midst of recovery, which
Yes.
still can take years. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I tell anyone, when you break a leg, right, you can't walk right away.
Yeah.
So don't push it. And for some people, you can walk in 3 months. For some people, it might be a year. Pace yourself. But the good thing about the body is that it likes to autocorrect.
Yes. And
so I love that you have survived by design, by God's grace. Grace is a person. She stood over you. Grace was standing over your mother as your mother was standing over you.
Yeah.
To come back and throughout the years, at least on my channel, to constantly educate us, because it constantly changes, by the way. That's the thing about this monster COVID. It keeps morphing into something else. However, now that we say this, I need you to have a radio show. I need it.
No.
I need it. We shall follow. Once a month. Spotify, Apple. We're going to do it.
See, you guys see how she put me on the spot with this? I'm just trying to be helpful in this little sliver.
Listen, I want you to get to the Julias of the world that didn't make it. My little sliver is mystical misfits. There are people that don't believe in me. So I know that I'm saving 100 people, right? I know this. But there's thousands out there, thousands that you could hit better. One, because you're a scientist, a bona fide, which tickles me black, by the way. I love the fact that you are a bona fide scientist. I know her. I'm trying to get kids to NASA. She invents things for children to play with, to be excited about science. COVID interrupted all of that.
Yeah.
But we're now back to going into who Nisha used to be post-COVID, cautiously.
Very cautiously.
As a scientist, back being with her students. By God's grace, He sent grace down.
Whew, okay.
And I did not know your mother was a nurse. All I knew was that, if you don't mind me saying it this way, all I knew was that your mother saved you.
Yeah.
Because there were times, everyone, she was incapacitated, seizuring, right?
Couldn't talk, couldn't walk. And I now know that, because for a lot of people,
look what people are saying. I don't know if you're
no. I will say this here. People only see me talking and looking healthy because they're only seeing me at my best. They didn't see when I would wake up and not recognize people's faces. That's only mild to moderate post-COVID.
Yeah.
My family saw me like having seizures Christmas morning and not even having that memory, or not being able to get out of bed, or getting to the point I couldn't swallow or talk for days. Like I had to decide of, do I talk or do I go to the bathroom by myself? These people, there are over 30 million people with long COVID, confirmed long COVID in this country. That is almost 10% of our population. However, they're not in front of your face because they're in bed, incapacitated.
Yes.
They can't even stand. Like when I was at my worst, I couldn't do sound. I couldn't do light. I had to sit in darkness, not being able to move, not being able to be around loved ones because it was hurt. It was truly painful having my body do anything but survive.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I don't want to happen to people, but I also want folks listening to understand that you don't want to do that to someone else because you want to look cute or you think we're in a normal. There's some good advice going on in the comments, by the way. And also,
Yeah,
yes, asthmatics cannot take aspirin. You're probably going to be put on like nattokinase or some other kind of medication that's over the counter or a supplement. But what I wanted to make sure I did was, you talk about spirit. This is going to be my scientific spirit.
Go for it.
I don't do tarot. My relationship with the mystical side of things is through numbers and through research.
Yeah.
And what I see through the numbers and the research has made me go, I am stressed about what happens this week. And I reached out to Miss Tracey and said, just like the person in church, Pastor, the spirit moves me to say something before people do something this week.
Oh, right.
And going into the new year, it's not a race, it's a marathon right now. Whether you are under the weather and you are trying to make sure you lift your spirits this holiday season, I need you to pace yourself, regardless of your health. You need to pace because this season looks like it's going to try us more than any season. Not winter 2020, not winter 2021.
Are you kidding me?
Pace yourself.
I'm tired of this.
You tired?
Are you kidding me?
You tired, Tracey? Ma'am, you missed.
You're tired.
No, you missed Beta. You missed Delta stateside. You missed Omicron.
I did. Yeah.
And you talk about, I'm tired.
Okay. I got you. Yes, I missed all of that. Yes.
See, now I got to look at you sideways going, ma'am. She's talking about, ooh.
You escaped Omicron. You were like, I was like, coming? Okay, I'm going to the Caribbean. Bye.
Me and my mother were like, see, she could have used spirit to give us a heads up. Instead, she done fled. Don't try me.
You know what?
Don't try.
So funny. That's so funny because it was in hindsight that I was like,
how it looked to the rest of us?
Okay. Come to the Caribbean. We do not have the same issues.
She said she tired.
But I know. I'm so sorry. Right. I didn't get any of that.
The disrespect.
We do not suffer here. But the other thing we don't suffer, the reason why we don't suffer here is because we do live off the land. So we have something called bush tea.
Yeah.
We all drink it. We drink it as recreation.
Yeah.
But it's such an immune booster. The combination of herbs we call bush.
Yeah.
From the bush tea.
But no, I'll say this here. Besides you talking about you tired, I'll let it go. But
it is, right?
This has been in my spirit for a minute to let you know.
Dare you not tell the world to get out.
But
that is so funny.
But this holiday season, don't focus on the way joy is supposed to look. Focus on experiencing that joy. Because we all need some joy over the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
So did I do a thorough review? Did I leave you? Oh, wow. Okay.
You have thoroughly educated all of us. And I'm just so happy to have you come on the show and tell us everything we need to do. I do want to add just one thing. I want to ask. Aspirin,
flaxseed,
CoQ10. So CoQ10 you can get at Amazon. I guess flaxseeds you can take in a pill, but there's flaxseed oil.
Yes, I would say pill. I cannot stomach the oil, so I always tell people take flaxseed pill. CoQ10 comes in gummy bears now that are peach flavored. You can get at CVS and Walgreens.
Anything gummies. But here's the thing: if you can actually cook with flaxseed oil.
You can.
And you don't need a lot of it. You need a drop of it to see, to help you. Like, I don't know, you can cook it with your hamburgers.
You can do that.
Oil, it gives it flavor.
Yep.
and you get the oil through the meat that you're eating, or
Yes.
you can put, again, my lifestyle has changed in terms
Yeah.
of, but when you're having salad, you can
Hmm.
put a drizzle of flaxseed oil on top of your dressing. You won't know the difference.
There you go. And all you're trying to do is just trying to support your body, keeping your veins and your blood flow strong. So even if you have those microclots, they're not going through collapsing veins, which is
Yes,
going to cause a lot of those post-COVID complications that we're seeing people suffering with. And
yes.
not just adults, but children as well. I don't
I,
recommend that recommendation for kids, but just keep in mind to be mindful that this isn't just an adult thing. We're
right.
seeing similar percentages of children with post-COVID complications as well. And having
Mhm.
RSV and flu back to back with it is
Right.
doing no one any favors.
I just want to add that Thanksgiving is probably the time we are going to eat high levels of vegetable oil products
Yeah.
and sugars.
Yes.
And most of us might eat it for 3 days straight.
Hmm.
Because there's always enough food for, oh, I need to have stuffing for dinner. No, you don't.
I can't say nothing. I've been waiting to actually be able to eat for 3 years. So
I,
my sin this holiday season is
it's
I'm
going to
gonna have my
happen.
sausage stuffing. Listen, I've been struggling to swallow, talk, walk.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have my sausage stuffing.
Do
Now,
it.
will
Do
I
it.
pace?
I'm not
I'll
stopping you.
pace.
I'm not
I'll
stopping you.
pace.
But here's what I want to tell everyone.
Yeah.
You're going to go through your vegetable oil overload.
Yes.
But vegetable oil does help with uh, ruining your lung capacity in terms of what is it when they calcify, when your lungs calcify,
Harden, basically when they
harden,
harden. Yeah.
harden your arteries,
Yeah.
right? So when it's over, because there's no way you're going to be able to go to grandma's house with your bullshit about healthy eating, right? Don't try it. Bring your own plate if you're healthy, but I'm just talking to regular people. After Thanksgiving, learn to fry with um, grapeseed oil.
Yes.
You
And
can't tell the difference,
no.
right? Learn to put olive oil in everything. Cook with it, but olive oil is not good for high heat.
Yeah, no. No, no, no.
But cook with it. You can saute something with olive oil. So those are all the things that's contributing to the lung capacity and hardening of the arteries. Like, let's start changing our diet after Thanksgiving.
Yes. And I would say, and after Thanksgiving, if you can't do so today or tomorrow, I wouldn't do it tomorrow because everybody will be grocery shopping. But like the dead period during the Thanksgiving holiday, yes, you can sprinkle it on salads. That's a good suggestion.
And
Is
okra.
make sure if you're down, like let's say something were to happen and you got sick. I can't stand when I see people saying this. If you have enough disposable income that you can do a half a week or a week of groceries, I like to tell people when you're going into the Thanksgiving to New Year's holiday season, you don't know what's going to happen. Get that extra couple of groceries if you can, so you don't feel you have to go out and get stuff when
Mm.
you're not feeling well, and not only are a danger to yourself, but to others. So make
Mm.
sure you have some stuff in your pantry that you don't have to go out and get groceries for you or your kids. Because I can't tell you how sometimes I watch YouTube and mama's talking about we ain't got cereal and the kid's been sick for 3 weeks. I'm like, what you been doing? Don't be that person. That's my personal PSA.
All right, let's end this because we could stay here for another 2 hours.
You
That's
can't.
just who you and I are. But I'm watching the Mystical Misfits, and they are riveted.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. Hopefully, the information is helpful and actionable and leads to a more enjoyable, safer, and memorable holiday season. And just remember, even if you don't want to take this advice, do not question other people who do, because you don't know what's going on in their home and what they have to lose. There's this great quote of, you don't look in somebody else's bowl to see if you have more than them. You look into someone else's bowl to make sure they have enough.
Mm.
You stay in your lane because you don't know what they have to lose. Respect and enjoy this holiday season. And wherever you can find those little bits of joy, grab it.
Okay, we're just going to end it with that. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Netia McCray, blessings. Thank you. Give your blessings to my mother. To my mother.
To both.
Give your blessings to your mother. She is a hero.
She is.
Love you.
Thank you so much. Bye, Tracy. Bye, Mystical
Bye.
Misfits.
Bye.
Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live.